This is Sean with Theta Chi Delta Pi chapter from Indiana State, and we're saving the stories. And I'm speaking with a gentleman that is one of the alumni. It's Garrett Ackles. Garrett, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Sean?
I'm all right. So why don't you give us a little bit of background? You grew up in Arcadia, and that's north of Indianapolis. You were born in 1964 on Valentine's Day. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your parents, what they did, what their names were, and then also kind of what activities you got in grade school and high school.
Yeah, you bet. So my dad was Bill Ackles. My mom was Bev Ackles. Was born in Noblesville, just north of Indianapolis, and spent my early years there in Arcadia. We moved to Illinois. Folks got divorced. Mom and sister and I moved back and finished my high school days at Hamilton Heights. Graduated in '82. Played a lot of sports back then.
So did you ever think when you were in high school that you would end up joining a fraternity?
You know, I really wasn't sure to Indiana State to be in their aviation program. I was very focused on that, but along the ride there, I got to know a bunch of these guys from Theta Chi, and we fit in pretty good. We're just kind of good old boys, and it was a natural fit for me at the time.
All right, so how we met was actually because of the most well-known winning racing family for the Indianapolis 500, the Unsers, and Ralph Hansen is one of your alumni, isn't that right?
That's right. He's a legend at Theta Chi.
So I had the privilege of interviewing Ralph about his memories of the Unsers. The alumni could check it out. We got Mario Andretti and about 45 other people all telling their favorite stories, even Paul Page and Doug Bowles. But Ralph was a great interview, and we look forward to hearing his stories about Indiana State and your fraternity. So let's kind of get to it. Old school back in the day. This is what the house looked like. So what era was this? What years was this house, the main house?
Yeah, so, some of the little bit older guys are going to be more familiar with this one. That was before my time. I think this was back in the 60s and early 70s, if I remember right. The old guys will probably kick me in the butt for not knowing my history a little better.
Well, that's all right. There's a lot of, we call it non-aggressive hazing, but creative things happened pretty much in every house. I myself was a SAE at Ball State. We already did this, or we are doing it currently also with our SAE alumni from that house. Here's a shot of you and some of the guys back in the day. Can you describe this photo and what the moment was?
Well, this is one of many evenings that we spent at the house. This was at the Swan Street house. I'm sure there were a few ladies probably running around, but yeah, it might have been a brotherhood night. We were having a good time for sure.
All right, so who was the very first active that you met? What was your path to the house? Like, how did that happen?
Like a lot of the guys at Indiana State, I lived in a dorm the first semester, and you would hear about the fraternity parties, and I had some interest in it. I had a few guys on our floor that were Theta Chi's, and they'd invited me to stop by the house. And once I did, it just, it was kind of an Animal House type atmosphere, but the quality and the heart of these guys, the helping hand mentality was evident. And I fell in love with the whole process that fall of my freshman year, and then pledged the spring of my freshman year.
All right, so who was, if you remember, the first couple guys that really you bonded with and sold you on, really wanted to get in this group? Who were those first guys for you, and what was maybe a story or two that you can remember kind of bonding with them at the beginning?
Well, there are thousands of stories. I wish I had time for all of them, but guys like Brett Deckard and Bob McAfee and Eddie Holtzcall, and those are just to name a few, but a lot of those guys were already there. They were actives, and seemed to take a liking to me, and made sure that I got the information I needed, and then it became a really easy choice. That fall, I decided not to pledge right away. I wanted to look a little bit, but I spent a majority of my time at the house that fall, and so when spring came around, it was a natural for me to pledge Theta Chi.
So here we got an aerial shot of the two houses. Obviously, the brick was the first. Was the other one, was that an add-on, or did you just take over that property and kind of encompass that whole block? What's the story on how it basically was formed?
Yeah, so when I was there, I was at the Swan Street house. The guys from the 80s will remember that well. At the very end of my tenure with as an active, we had kind of ran our path. We rented that house there on Swan Street. We wanted to own a house, and the current alumni at that time encouraged us to that and supported that. And so the year that I was leaving, we actually acquired this Oak Street property, and it was the brick house. There were houses all around it at that time, and then over the years, probably I'm guessing through the 90s, early 2000s, several of our alumni were very involved in making this more of a big property, including that second building and putting the basketball courts in, the volleyball, and really opening up and making it kind of our own little campus there in that neighborhood.
About how many guys were living in the house, and how many guys were around campus, and how many guys were in your pledge class?
Yeah, so my pledge class, which, by the way, I'll put this on record, was probably the most athletic pledge class Theta Chi's ever seen, maybe any fraternity. We had 8 of us. We were small, but we were powerful. At the time when I pledged, there were about 40 actives, and probably about 12 to 15 lived in the house. Again, that was the Swan Street property. On campus at the time in Indiana State, I may be off on this a little bit. I'm thinking there's probably 8,000 to 10,000 total on the Indiana State campus at that time. I came in '82. That was just a couple years after the Larry Bird days. Our era is known as the Eddie Bird days. And, we sure had a lot of fun.
What house was Larry Bird in?
I don't believe Eddie belonged to a house. I think he was independent through his time. He had a few other things going on during his time there.
What was there any stories though?
He spent his amount of time at a couple of the local drinking establishments, as I understand.
Well, do you have any specific stories that kind of carried down through, the urban legends of the Bird on campus? Is there anything you can remember besides obviously how well he did at basketball, but anything else that you can recall?
Well, we always heard stories about, he was a country boy, and he liked to have his fun on his nights off. So we heard stories about that. Some of our alumni that, were just a couple of years older than I, they had the opportunity to be there during his years. He graduated in '79. I guess my closest personal story was, and some of the brothers that are in my era know, at one point in time, towards the end of my active days, I purchased a bar there in town called Legends. And my closest story with Larry Bird was the freshman. I had that bar at the time that Eddie Bird was a freshman. And it was a pretty big deal to know that Larry's little brother was coming to play basketball for us. And lo and behold, he and a couple other the new freshman basketball players walked into my bar one Saturday. And it was pretty obvious who he was. When you're a Bird, you don't get to hide it very easily. So he walks in, sits down, orders a pitcher of beer. And, as a diligent bar owner that I was at the time, even though I was only 22 or 23 at that time, I asked for his ID, and he just kind of looked at me like I was crazy, wanted to know if I knew who he was. I acknowledged that I did know who he was, and I also knew that he just graduated high school a few weeks ago and wasn't old enough to drink, and asked him to leave. So he made it really clear that his brother could buy my bar, and made it really clear that it was for sale for the right price. But I never got that offer.
Well, it's good you stuck with the law. There was a story, I'm going to just interject real quick, in Indianapolis of Justin Bieber before he was 21, came to the Broadway area and tried to get in the Vogue. And the guys manager of the Vogue didn't even like him in the first place, and he kept trying to get in, and they kept kicking him out. So just because you're privileged doesn't mean you deserve it. So anyway, I'm gonna kind of cut through a few of these.
I gotta say, some of our younger actives probably were able to slide in there a little before they were at age easier than Eddie did.
All right, so here's a shot. Looks like maybe you guys are down in kind of maybe the southern states, depending on what that background is. Where's that shot taken, and who's with you?
Yeah, so that shot's taken looking out over the Grand Canyon. We there were the 5 of us: Eddie Holtzcall, Matt Franklin, Brett Deckard, myself. We all jumped in Jeff Molzer's parents' van and took a road trip. We had a national convention. I'm thinking, these guys will correct me, I think this was probably in the summer of '84. We drove to Scottsdale, Arizona for national convention, and we stopped along the way and took some photos like this one. It was a phenomenal trip. We met hundreds of other Theta guys around the country, met a lot of Arizona State ladies, and just had a whole heck of a lot of fun that week.
So we got a float. Let's talk about the parade. And did you help build the pirate ship?
Yeah, so part of the claim of fame of our era back then in the 80s, we had some real true craftsmen, builders and so forth. And every year at Indiana State, we had a homecoming parade, and the winner of the homecoming float parade was then invited to the Indianapolis 500 parade. And several years in a row, we won. This one was pirate ship. Actually, like, I think that was I'm going to forget the name now. Peter Pan, I think, was the theme on that one. We made the pirate ship and had him going. That float traveled all the way from Terre Haute to Indianapolis, and I think that picture was probably from the Indianapolis scene.
Did you end up sinking it in White River?
We should have. That would have been good. I think it was the following year we actually made a float of the space shuttle. It also won. We also took it over to Indianapolis. So those were pretty cool.
Here we got that shot, the
Yeah.
space shuttle. How long did it take you to make that Earth?
Well, I'm not sure about the Earth. The shuttle itself, the whole float, we spent a solid week with a lot of nights there. We were paired up, and I'm going to apologize if I get this wrong. I think that year we were paired up with Alpha Chi's. The other year, I think we were with the Chios, and that could be flipped around. We've got a lot of brothers who married Chios and Alpha Chi's, so they'll correct me if I was wrong on that. But the interesting, fun thing about this space shuttle one was that we threw a little animation in there. So as you were going down the road, a hatch could open out of the top of that space shuttle. And then we had a floating astronaut that floated up, was full of helium, and was dressed up in an astronaut costume and would float up out of there. And then we would drag him back in. But to accomplish that, a couple of our brothers went to one of the local adult stores and bought a blow-up sex doll. And that's what we used for our astronaut, dressed up and everything. But he or she had a pretty odd-looking face. That's for sure.
So were these guys on your executive board, and how many songs did they write in the house?
Yeah, so this, always loved this picture. This is a couple of our brothers from back there in the 80s, and Paul Doncaster on the right there doing the singing, and Jeff Bogdan playing the big bass. And yeah, Jeff actually, I don't know if he was president of our chapter at that moment, but he at one point in time was president of our chapter. We had a really interesting thing. I think this was during homecoming week. They had a kind of a battle of the bands, but it was karaoke style, air band type things, and we were pretty tough at that too. We won those several years in a row and dressed it up well. I was never invited to be one of the singers. I was always the bouncer, trying to keep the crowd off. That was Brett Deckard, and my role was keeping all the girls from rushing the stage.
I bet you still could pull off that makeup, though. I mean, the eyeliner, the zigzags on the face, that is I literally was hoping you brought in some punk band from England for homecoming, but that's great. It's the guys. But then you got this guy, Is this guy doing the robot? What's the move this guy's doing right now? And please explain the robot with the nice tie and vest.
Oh yeah, this is Brother Eddie Holzfall. He's also another legend in our chapter, and he was the ultimate robot guy. He could pull off just about anything.
So did you ever
somehow the girls seem to like it too.
Somehow the girls seem to like it. Well, he is a ginger. You know, I've got that at heart. So here's a shot of, you said this was the president of your national fraternity, and this was at the convention. Is that right?
Yeah, this was at an Oxbow convention, I believe. And our president, Brother George T. Kilvis, was there. And we had a chance to meet him. And, it was a great time. And that was one of the things I always appreciated about our local chapter. The national chapter was always very supportive and helped us in any way we needed.
Okay, you got to go and support going to the games. It looks like you guys are in the stands, and you probably have no idea who was playing who, but why don't you give me some stories about tailgating and things going awry or things going crazy when you went to the game with the brothers? What's a couple things that you remember?
Yeah, so this particular picture, I think, was probably at a tandem race, which was an event for homecoming, I believe, that would pair up a fraternity and a sorority, and then the guy and the girl would ride a tandem bicycle. Similar to the Little Five at Bloomington, but this was our part of it. And it was pretty intense. It was very competitive. I'm pretty sure this picture came from one of those events where they were cheering us on the race. But talking about football games and basketball games, we had a lot of fun doing that and absolutely tailgated a bunch. Probably the most memorable game that I remember going to was down in Carbondale, Illinois. We made the playoffs. We were playing Southern Illinois. It was one of those late fall days where it should have been cold enough to snow, but it just wasn't quite cold enough. It poured down ice and rain, and we all carpooled down there. We stuck it out all day long, and then on that 3-hour ride back, one of our guys, puppy dog, and I'll leave it at that, fell asleep in another one of our guys' car. Brad, I'll call you out on this one. And along the ride, Brad had stopped to get gas in a little town called Dix, Illinois, which was not too far out of Carbondale, about 2.5 hours from Terre Haute. And while he was getting gas going into pay, puppy dog gets out of the car, goes around the backside of the building to take a leak. And while he's doing that, Brad gets back in the car thinking the puppy dog's still asleep in the back seat and heads home, leaving puppy dog there at the gas station in the pouring down rain at about 9 o'clock at night. Brad of course, he doesn't know any different. We don't have cell phones or anything, all pay phones back then. Puppy dog's calling the house, telling them, not real happy at the time, saying somebody's going to come back and get us. Brad doesn't realize that he's not there until he gets all the way back to Terre Haute. And so a couple of us drove all the way back, picked him up about 2 o'clock in the morning, brought him back. It was a long day and night, but it's another fun story and a telling story about brotherhood and how we take care of each other best we can.
So it just kind of explains it looks like you're maybe paired with the sorority, and is that right? And then what's kind of the backstory behind it?
Yeah, so I like this picture. This was the tandem race that I just described a few minutes ago where the guys were cheering. This was us, and I think we were paired with Alpha Fees that year, if I'm looking at some of these right. This picture is actually in front of our Swan Street house, which was the house we were in the late 70s through the 80s, mid 80s. This was our team at that point in time. I see Mike Graham there on the far left. He was our coach. I'm the next one over. I think that's Smitty and Farmer and maybe John Ricevich and Stoney. And I can't tell who's on the far right, maybe Mike. We had a great time with that. And I wish I was in the same shape now that it was back then.
Well, let's let the viewers take a look at this photo for a second. It's a great shot. All right. So, Founders Day. When is Founders Day? And maybe what's some stories you remember happening on Founders Day?
Yeah, so it's a special day for all Theta Chi's. We appreciate the um, the heritage that we have, those who who started this all up, and it wasn't unusual for us to make a toast and celebrate that day as actives, and then also even now as alumni and with our Facebook page and so forth, we like to share stories with each other and talk about that part.
All right, here's a shot. It looks like these possibly your pledge brothers, and where are you guys? Is that in the house, or is that some other, maybe a formal that you guys having a fraternity formal? Could that be it?
Yeah, I think that's probably our Dream Girl dance, if I remember right. And yeah, we had lots of those. Every year in the spring we'd have Dream Girl, and one of our good lady friends would be elected Dream Girl for the year, and we'd celebrate her, and we'd all bring our dates and have a great time. It's just an opportunity to dress up a little bit.
All right, and we got a shot of the composite here. That's 1970. So,
Yeah.
are you on that composite?
So I'm not on that composite. I was probably in about sixth grade that year. I'm pretty certain you would find Ralph Hansen on that composite, probably Bob Hansbrook, and I could go on with others. But that was, when I was a pledge and an active, they always talked about the glory days, and that back then I think they pushed 100 active members. And was winning just about anything there was to win on campus. Again, Ralph was a key leader in that. Bob Hasbrook and others were a big part of that. And I hope that we'll have a chance to have Ralph and Bob do some of these interviews and tell a little more about that era. I can tell you that, like all good things, sometimes it comes to an end or it slows down. And Ralph will be the first to tell you that, you have to have great leadership to continue something like that. And Theta Chi went through a pretty rough time through the mid 70s and just about lost the chapter. And then another great group of guys came through, great leaders that were just a little bit older than me. Craig Simpson, Brett Deckard, and I could go on with the names of that. And they kind of got it going again and ramped it back up.
Well, let's let the viewers just check out the details of these guys in the composite.
You bet.
It looks like you said it was close to 100, and you've got 7 by maybe 11 or 12. So yeah, that's right up there. Here's another shot. Were you in this one by chance? I'm just going to have to find the needle in the haystack. All right, so I just want to get back to just some basic stuff.
I'm the one with the orange stash.
Right, of course. So what do you think are some of just your favorite moments that you remember that really, let's say, meant a lot to you, being around the guys and at the house itself and just bonding? Like, what are some of those great specific things that you guys would always do that were consistent traditions at the house, and
right,
maybe engaging the traffic or the people, or on a Saturday night? What are some of those traditions you remember?
Well, I think most people think of fraternities and the parties and so forth, and no doubt we had some killer parties, and however it was, I guess they liked the country boys, but we seemed to get all the prettiest girls there and had great times. But honestly, for me, it was the brotherhood nights that really kicked it for me. We would have nights where it was just for us guys, and we would do different activities, and we would learn more about each other. We took a lot of trips. We would take road trips to other chapters around the Midwest, and we'd just get kind of a wild hair, and on a Thursday, and we'd call a chapter somewhere. I know we went through Kentucky and Michigan and Illinois, Ohio, different chapters, and we would call them on a Thursday, say, you guys want some visitors this weekend, and we'd go check them out. Of course, all the other Indiana Theta Chi chapters we visited frequently. Oxbow was an annual event that we would attend, and a lot of times we would rent a bus. Now, those buses back then weren't quite like they are now, but we would rent a bus usually and take a full bus load or two to the Oxbow events. We actually hosted one. I'm guessing that was probably in '86 or '87, which was a great event there in Terre Haute. And then certainly we would make trips to national conventions like the photo you saw earlier whenever we could. Not everybody would.
Where was your national headquarters by chance?
Yeah.
Where was your national headquarters?
Yeah, originally it was in Trenton, but it moved to Indianapolis. And so now our national headquarters is based in Carmel, and which makes it great for us being that close and ability to have that kind of a tight relationship with our national leadership. But yeah, those are the events that I remember best and that had the most impact, where I got to know these brothers who continue to be great friends. Honestly, my best friends remain those brothers that I got to know and spend time with through those things.
So what would you like to tell the guys that are there now and the guys that are thinking about rushing now, what they need to get out of it, and really not just get out of it, but how they need to apply their effort? If you could build them the map, what would that be?
Sure. So as a pledge, first of all, I would do everything possible to learn about all your fellow pledge brothers and your active brothers. And there's going to be activities that you do that'll help you learn all those things. But I think that that bond starts during your pledgeship, and then as an active, as you go through the rest of your years of college, take advantage of all these activities and events and so forth. We just a few weeks ago had an event in Indianapolis that was phenomenal, and Ralph and several of the others put that together. As at the Columbia Club downtown Indianapolis, and we had a bunch of actives that came to that, which was awesome to see. Gives you that chance to have that interaction and get to meet people. As you go through the active those years, just bringing on new blood. That's the lifeblood of our fraternity is recruiting and pledging really outstanding people. Ralph and others will tell you that the worst mistake that you can make as an active is pledging new brothers that aren't, I hate to say it, but aren't worthy, that don't have the heart, that don't have the helping hand mentality, that aren't going to be there for the right reasons, that are, simply there for the party, simply there for those other benefits. And you have to be choosy about it. I would rather have 3 or 4 pledges that are phenomenal than 20 pledges that are not going to serve us right and take us downhill. Cancer spreads fast in that way, and we know that through history. Once you become an alumni, I think you got to stay involved, the best you can. And we all have different stages of our lives. My wife and I have 6 kids, and there was a stage of my life where we were so busy, raising those kids that I wasn't as active with the Alumni Association and with the actives as I'd like to be. But I still made a pretty good habit of making it to homecoming and some of the other activities. And now that my kids are at a spot to where they're college age and above, then my goal is to get more active again and with the alumni, with the events and doing things to help this grow. And that's an important part of it. We're Theta Chi's for life, not just for the 4 years that you're in the college years. And then I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough, that I know firsthand, is just the pure networking and the value of that, of knowing what your brothers do. I live in Louisville, Kentucky now. I came here because one of our fraternity brothers, Rod Russell, and his family owned a business down here, and I was needing a job at the time, and had a background in that business, and sure enough, he gave me a call, said, "Hey, G, I understand you're looking for a job. I know you got this background. We'd love to have you come talk to us about it." And so, significant part of my life. The last 20 years, I've been in Louisville because of a connection I've got through Theta Chi and through that brotherhood. And there's a lot more examples of that that I think we could all take more advantage of, and we need to know and understand is out there.
And what positions did you hold in the house?
So I ran for president several times and was beat out by excellent people. I think Eddie beat me one year. I think Dean Black beat me one year. So I never quite made it there as much as I would have loved.
Hey, I'm going to stop you real quick. It kind of cut out for a second, and I'll edit this. Start again. What positions did you hold in the house?
Okay. Are we ready?
Yep.
So I ran for president a couple times, and I got beat both times, and rightfully so. I think Eddie Holtzcall beat me one year, and Dean Black beat me another year, and they proved to be phenomenal leaders. I was pledge chairman one year, and had a lot of fun with that. I think I was the I don't remember what the title was, party chairman or something like that, the social events guy one year, and I think I got nominated that because I was able to fall into an exorbitant amount of alcohol that came very cheap through a connection that I had, and so I was able to supply a lot of alcohol that year for not very much money, and I think I got I think it was events chairman or something like that. Yeah, those were the main things. Then was very active with all the sports and all the dances and all the other activities that we had going on, the floats and so forth.
All right, so behind you is a old plane, and here's a shot of, is that a Cessna, or what type of plane is that?
Yeah, that's a Cessna 172, a Skyhawk. I was an aviation major in college and a pro pilot major, and that actually, I'm in the plane. I think, well, honestly, I don't remember. I'm either in the plane taking the picture or I'm flying that plane. But Mike Thurridge, Monster, was in the other plane, whichever one it was, and we were doing a little flying next to each other one day. We found each other up in the air at the same time, and we kind of pulled in tight, doing a little Top Gun action there.
Well, that's great. Is there any other stories you'd like to share before we close this out?
Yeah, it would be hard for me to pick out. There literally are thousands, but I think I'll close out just by thanking you, first of all, Sean, for bringing this opportunity to us. I'm hoping that maybe we can make this something that our chapter finds valuable, and sharing other stories from other brothers. I'm not going to steal all of them. I'll let other brothers tell some of them. They've got their own perspectives. I think the main message right now is I just encourage everybody to be involved. Follow the lead of our alumni leadership and support our actives.
Okay. Well, this is a very good first run of saving the stories of Theta Chi for Indiana State University. And Garrett, I'm glad that we're going to be able to work together and help save the stories of the alum for not just themselves and their families and their next generations, but also so the other alums can reminisce, hear those backstories. And I think this is going to be a great road ahead, and I appreciate you having faith in us helping save the stories and the memories.
You bet. Well, Sean, I'll tell you, I couldn't be more impressed with the samples that you've sent me and with the work you did with the Unser family and the Indianapolis 500. I think, that's a proof that this is a great product. And I look forward to working with you and hopefully getting many, many other brothers to support this and tell their stories.
Okay. All right. We'll just stay in the line. I'm going to close this one out.
Great. Thanks, Sean.